I go first. Hi, everyone. I'm always excited to be at events at A.Team. I've been a CXO for about 2.5 years, I think. And I know many of you, but many of you I haven't met yet. The thing is, I was a psychotherapist a long time ago. Then I became a learning and developing leadership, management developing consultant, and I had a lot of roles in big companies working on equity, diversity, learning, HR, strategy, talent, you name it. And the common denominator in all this, and we were talking about this before, is acceptance of ourselves and acceptance of the community members. So I'm glad to be here. And my book just came out, Leading to Succeed, talks about that. How do we get rid of all these self-limiting beliefs that hinder our progress? And I love that we are talking today because we're going to talk about that, how this impacts our community. Thank you. Elon.
Yes. So actually see a lot of familiar faces here around the call. So thank you for taking the time. For those who haven't met him yet, I'm part of the A Leader and AI/ML Guild. And I think that for me, I also come from a background of experience in software engineering, been for a few missions with A.Team so far. And I'm actually quite looking forward to this conversation with Wagner because we spoke a little bit earlier for this conversation, and was quite intriguing to see the different experiences that we have based on culture, generations, and I truly believe we're kind of heading in the right direction as a society globally, but there is always more to be done. And maybe that could be our initial entry point to the conversation today. So, maybe let's start with something, honest as
Yes.
a starting point and see what were your experiences so far.
Elon, it was just you guys, Elon and I talked a week or so ago. And it was so clear to me that we are evolving, we are making progress, of course. But you have to understand, my generation, I came to this country 22, long time ago. And I was born and raised in Brazil. Brazil is a very homophobic place, at least in the 80s, let's put it that way, in the 80s, when I was growing up. And the 70s, anytime before, it was military government. And actually, I had 3 brothers. They're all straight, by the way. It wasn't comfortable for me. It wasn't easy for me. I was bullied in school all the time. People used to call me names all the time. I prefer to play with the girls than playing with the boring boys because the boys were playing with the cars. I want to play with the dolls. I want to dance. So at the end of the day, I love that I'm here today. Look, I made it here, but it wasn't easy because my experience was always feeling ashamed of who I was, always feeling unsafe, always feeling that I didn't belong. So to me, growing up in my teens, and even when I decided to come to the United States, was my freedom trip. I just came at 22, no money, no English, no social support, nothing. I came as an immigrant, and it was the best thing I had done. So, Elon, when you talk about your experience with supportive parents, with supportive friends, I want to be in Tel Aviv. I wish I was born in Tel Aviv because it felt so different from my experience, right? Tell us about your
Yeah.
experience. Your experience is
Yeah.
totally different.
So funny enough, to those around Israel, I actually grew up in the south. I didn't grow up in Tel Aviv, which is
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. I didn't know.
it's not Tel Aviv. No, culturally speaking, it's not Tel Aviv. But still, I have heard the stories like Wagner just said, and I think that my experience, like coming out and growing up, is that it's going to be this, significantly horrific thing that could ever happen to me. But when I actually did come out, then like nothing. It was 10 times worse in my mind than it was in reality. My parents were accepting, my friends were extremely accepting, had no problems. I have gone through the military service, everyone in my military side that I've done like closed units in the military. So really tight connection. It was always so fine. I haven't had probably not even one bad experience that I can go to. And it's actually good to see. It's good to see that we have gone through this process. I assume it's still not like that for everyone, but I really hope it will be.
Yeah. And Elon, it's funny
Um,
that you said that because let's talk about this. You said in your mind, you thought it would be much harder, wasn't it?
yeah,
So let's talk about that because I think what we are experiencing today is that externally, when you talk about being gay today, of course, it's more acceptable to talk about it. But for the individual, it's a different story, isn't it? Because each one of
yes,
us have a family, a community. We belong to certain groups. We know that there are some expectations that people have of us. So we start building this guilt slash shame because actually we should be somebody that others expect you to be. And that's hard. I wanna be very clear here. When we think about in our minds, imposter syndrome is a perfect example. Anyone has that imposter syndrome when you're placed in a position, in a role, in a new experience. Let's put it that way. But we need to normalize that. So my goal here in my career now is to normalize those reactions. Like, for example, depression. Freud always said depression is a natural reaction to difficult events in life. So it's important to recognize and not be ashamed or be guilty for it. So I love that you're saying your mind was harder, even in the environment you are, because we all in our minds, things are very different. I can tell you today is fun, being gay. I've been with my partner for 33 years. Now I'm telling you my age.
wow,
But I've been with my partner for 33 years. It's amazing. But I tell you this, in the early days of the 90s, people threw cans on us because we were holding hands in New York. There was an old lady, I don't never forget this. We are celebrating our 5th anniversary or something. And I kissed my partner on the street. This is in Greenwich Village, in the village. The old lady turned around and says, "You're gonna burn in hell, you two." And of
it's
course, my
horrible.
partner is a little more outspoken. He said something to her to the same effect. But it's like, even in New York, it doesn't matter where you are. I think we need to respect where people are because each one of us are in a different stage in life. Each one of us. And it feels horrible when we feel, oh, I should be this. I should be more open. I should be less worried. No, you shouldn't be anything less or more. You should be aware that actually it's natural to have your feelings and acceptance. That's the place where acceptance comes in. Because if you think about imposter syndrome, self-limiting beliefs, I came to this country. Look, I became the VP, the head of leadership development for IBM globally. I was the top leader of leadership for IBM. There was like 40,000 managers, 6,000 executives. I was the head of leadership for Ginny Rometty. It doesn't really matter, but it was good that I achieved it. But what I'm trying to say is, when I came to this country, I never thought I could be more than a busboy because my education in Brazil was horrible. I was the fourth child of a poor family. We didn't have any money. So I went to school in high school at night. I went to college at night. So my schooling was terrible. But so I came to this country. People are highly educated. People spoke English. People didn't have an accent. All these things start creating self-limiting beliefs. And I want you guys to think about this because we all carry them. When you start thinking about self-limiting, oh, I cannot do this. Oh, I'm not creative. Oh, no, that's not for me. Anytime you have that reaction, I want to start just asking yourself, how can I? Instead of saying, no, I can't because it's not me, how could I? Just ask yourself, how could I? Because gays and lesbians in the non-binary community, I'm so proud of what's happening today. But at the same time, we are witnessing the highest rates of suicide in teenagers and young people. So we are not there yet. And it's hard to think because we have self-limiting beliefs becoming our reality. Don't let that happen. If you have friends and family, anybody who comes to you and says, no, it's not for me, I cannot do this, just ask them, how could you find a way to do it? Because, we talked about that, the acceptance and all this. Legally, Elon reminded me, legally, we are way ahead because legally we are doing well, except for countries like Iran, Egypt, Dubai. I will never go
Israel.
to those countries. I won't set foot in countries that don't want me there. And people say, oh, why not? It's like basically because I respect myself and I don't want to be killed. But I think we need to think about that. Imagine the impact of oppression. Let's talk about that, right? We talk about that too. Oppression comes in so many shapes, forms, nuances. In the US, we call microaggressions when people just make a little joke about you being a little feminine, making a little joke, oh, you're gay, you must love this. Or you're gay, you must know how to do an arrangement of flowers. Little microaggressions that really are not just micro, they start taking over. And I
Did you
think
have any specific experiences, Wagner, in that space that you can share?
several. So growing up being bullied, it was a horrible experience, right? I would never be able to be like this. If I didn't go to therapy, I went to therapy for 7 years and then I became a therapist. That was great. But I went to therapy. Without therapy, I wasn't supposed to be alive. Let's put it that way. If I want to be really truthful, the way I was going when I was immigrating to the United States, I don't know if I would be alive. But why? And let's talk about this too. Drugs, sex, all of these are behaviors that we call coping mechanisms, right? We cope with anxiety in different ways, each one of us. We start feeling anxiety. It's imposter syndrome. It's a perfect example. Oh, they don't know that I'm not capable of doing this. Oh, they don't know I'm not that great. Oh, I'm not like them. I used to feel like that going to even in big companies when I was there, because executives would be talking about their wives, their kids, their weekends, their football. And by the way, I'm from Brazil, but I can't stand soccer. But it's I like it sometimes, but I'm not a fan. So it's very difficult. So this is the lesson for us. Lesson number one. When you start referencing all your own references about your own culture, about what you like to do, you're excluding everybody else. I used to go to meetings with executives and they're talking about football, American football and baseball and their kids, their wives. They didn't know they were excluding a lot of people in the room, but they were. So when we think about inclusive, I'm very focused on this, being inclusive. How do you become inclusive? By looking at people in the eye and respecting that they deserve to be who they are, period. And of course, listen to your bias because we all have it. I don't know, maybe I'm too old, I have it. But I think everybody has biases. You look at someone and says, oh, I don't really like somebody. You don't even know them, but you don't like them because they look like a old person who in your life who hurt you. We have that stuff, right? Because when we get hurt, the image stays with us. So if somebody looks like that person who hurt me when I was a child, I immediately have an aversion. So we need to start accepting everybody for who they are and accept that we have biases. But we are talking about legal too, and
Yes.
community acceptance. A.Team is a community of accepting people. At least I experienced that. And I would love to hear your opinion, Elon and others. How is this community managing acceptance of all including non-binary folks, because last year I was in the call with so many amazing people who felt like A.Team really gave them the conditions to be who they are. It was beautiful. So I don't know how you guys feel about acceptance today.
I personally feel that the experiences with A.Team, and I would say it's something that comes from the kind of company down. It's this culture that everyone deserves a place to bring their ideas. And I think it goes, in my experience, way beyond just, gender or attraction or sexual orientation. Like almost feels like a byproduct, which I think it's a good point to be in. Um, and I think it gives us also a step further as not just as a small community, which is safe for everyone. And I actually think there is also a benefit for it being so remote and worldwide, because it gives people outside of New York, San Francisco, and Tel Aviv the opportunity to have different experiences with being themselves in a much safer, I would call it, environment.
Yeah.
But I also think it takes us to kind of a global impact
Yeah.
on the general economy, because when we have like this company that is so strong on community and the values that they share, both internally and externally, it, it pushes everything like in the world. I think these are the types of company that eventually allowed for the legal changes, because
Yes.
it's nice that everyone is fighting, but when I would call it the pillars in the community that have a bit more say than just an individual stand for something and stand for the people in the community, it creates a community of acceptance.
I love that you're saying that, because I hope people in the call know this. It takes time in life to remind yourself that all your actions have an impact, the good and the bad ones, right? But what you're saying is A.Team, for example, we take for granted sometimes when we are in a place that we feel that we belong, we take for granted. But the exponential impact that A.Team can have is exactly what you said in the world, in the industries you're in technology, for example. We still have gender issues in technology, right? Because it's not very equitable, at least in the industry overall. You know, because now 50% of the STEM graduates are female, but only 20% in organizations are leaders in technology. So we have an equity issue. But Ronnie, when you talk about this, my experiences, if impact me, I just want to respond to Ronnie on the chat, because you talk about if he have an impact on me on how I came out in all this. Fortunately or unfortunately, I was very gay growing up, so I couldn't hide it. So there was no hiding.
Goes
I was
away.
always with the girls. I was dancing music. But of course, I act differently when I came to the United States, a little bit for safety. But then when I was in communities that were supportive of me, I felt so welcome and loved. I think the word is love. You know, when you feel loved, when you feel like accepted, you feel loved. And at IBM, I was very proud because Ginny Rometty herself would go to Texas when there was the non-gender bathrooms. She was there, and she sent all her executives there to fight for bathrooms with non-gender bathrooms, gender-neutral bathrooms. So I'm very proud of IBM. But all the other experiences made very shy, made me very less expressive. So I lost a lot of time in my life now expressing who I am. That changed, of course, because now I'm 60. Little do I know it goes by fast, but I'm having the best time of my life, because in my 40s, I let go of things. I said, who cares? Right? In my 30s, I was still dealing with corporate life and all that. 40s, corporate life accepted me, who I am. 50s, I said, you know what? Who cares? I love my partner and we are in a good place. And I have a
What
lot of
made you say
energy,
that?
so I'm fine. But the thing
What
is,
made you get to a point that, in other words, you loved yourself enough to just be you? What
yes,
triggered it?
but I have to say, you have to open yourself to someone and to others because love is a trick thing. Going back to your mind, in my mind, maybe I didn't feel that I was as lovable growing up, but I gave the chance to be with somebody who showed me a lot of love, and it's wonderful when you have the assurance. And I think sometimes it's about us opening up first because there's no harm in loving somebody. There is no harm in opening up to others who are not like you either, because acceptance does something very special. You know, it makes others feel that they deserve to be who they are and where they are. You know, and that goes with self-acceptance. Okay, going back to leadership, because I do a lot of leadership, self-acceptance is one thing, but self-confidence is another. It's not about knowledge. People say, oh, don't know enough. No, self-confidence is about the belief that you can learn and the belief that you deserve to be where you are. Please remember that. Self-confidence has nothing to do with knowledge. It's about just the belief that you can learn and the belief that you deserve to be where you are. And for
Can
those,
I add
those
something about that, Wagner?
yes,
So
please.
you talked about imposter syndrome, and yeah, I acknowledge I have it. I think
Yeah,
like many people have it in our industry
we all
on
do.
today. I think the point, or like the smartest way to look at it is not to fight it,
Oh,
but rather to acknowledge the fact that you have an imposter syndrome. Not try to suppress it, but try to embrace it, let's say, and understand, yes, I'm feeling uncertain right now about my abilities. With that, I'm still going to try and do whatever I want to do, although I feel the imposter syndrome. Like, just try to live with it
Dor,
instead of like suppressing it.
Dor, thank you for saying that because that's so critical. Because it's like the devilish bird on your shoulder. You know, if you listen too much, you're gonna feel ashamed of having this. Then you feel guilt for having that. Then it becomes a snowball of anxiety. And that's when those maladaptive behaviors come. When I couldn't accept myself, when I didn't know where the anxiety was coming from, drugs and sex and all that comes up because you want to just externalize the anxiety. But what you're saying is exactly what we need to do. Recognize it's there. It's not a monster. Don't make it bigger than it is. Imposter syndrome is going to be there whenever you encounter a different experience that you never had. And that's okay. Let yourself know that you can learn. Let yourself know that and share with somebody. Share that you're feeling unsafe, you're not feeling very sure of yourself. The only thing I say is shame is a useless emotion. Shame, you know, if you experience it, just tell yourself it's useless. It doesn't help anyone. And there is no reason to be ashamed. But thank you for reminding me because don't deny it, but don't make it too big. Because a lot of leaders lose their careers because of that. The derailment factor, they start externalized by drinking too much, having sex with people in work, and all these things are expressions of an anxiety that people don't know what to do with. So you see, it's so good to be compassionate. I know it's hard, guys, because you're too young. Maybe when I was a younger, I wasn't that compassionate, maybe. But you have to be. I was just across the street getting this coffee. Let me just tell you this because it was so beautiful. There was this young gay man. I think he's gay. He was very kind and he was very nice. There was this older man. He probably was in his 80s or 90s and so hot in New York today. And he was like just leaning on the counter and asked for a muffin. The guy came from the back of the counter, went all the way around and talked to the guy and helped him sit and brought him iced tea, brought him things. It was the most beautiful thing. The guy was so happy that somebody was taking care of him. So I just told this guy, I said, you're very kind. And he was so happy that somebody noticed that he was being kind. So those acts of kindness changes the world, I think, sometimes, you know? So don't forget that.
And I think you talked before like about the change from like 70s and today. I think we're also very lucky and very blessed to be in such an environment like A.Team, in such a community that is different, right? Like, and we are in the front of, you know, the tech industry, and like we are very blessed to be a part of it, but we should acknowledge also that it's not the same out there in the real world. Like, we are very much blessed to be in the front of this like community, and feeling that we're accepted, and that our organization is diverse and is inclusive and is equal for everyone, but to acknowledge that we need to lead it for like all the other industries as well, because it's not like that out there in finance, in industry, and like any other. And we still have a lot of, yes, we've progressed since the 70s till today. We still have a lot of work to do. I think also there's a lot of confusion today. Like, many organizations feel that diversity is the thing. They are bringing different people to the table, different skin color, different genders, different sexual orientation, and they feel that it's enough.
Yeah.
And as you said, Wagner, you might sit in a table, around the table with a bunch of people, and the table will be diverse, but maybe not inclusive.
Yeah.
And you might feel excluded from this conversation about baseball and football. Although this table is diverse,
yeah,
it doesn't mean that it's inclusive.
Yeah, agree.
So I think we still have a lot of work to do to get to the full, you know, DEI that we're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. But I'm proud of, you know, when I talked to Elon 2 weeks ago, I feel so happy that people have different experiences than mine. I really do. It's amazing to me that things have progressed this way. Of course, we have things to do, but the progress is undeniable. It's beautiful.
I actually have a very similar story to yours, just the exact opposite, that I really can't forget. I think when I was probably like 18 or 19, so I was kind of still anxious about it. I hold my ex-boyfriend back then hand in public somewhere, and actually an old lady came from the other table to us and said, "This is so beautiful, it's so nice that you're in love," and just went away. So like the exact same story, but the opposite.
What a different experience. So,
I will seize the moment to say that 2 weeks ago when I met Elon and Wagner and we had the most interesting conversation, I thought that we couldn't duplicate it. I was like, this is the most interesting conversation I ever had, and we couldn't duplicate it. And this conversation has exceeded my expectations. And thank you both so much for that. And to be a fly on the wall for that conversation and for this conversation is a gift for me, and I'm sure for everyone else here. We want to take the last few minutes for questions, and then I can honestly thank you again and again and again. So, questions?
and comments.
Comments. Feedback. Kidding.
I want to give a
Sharing
comment.
experiences.
I met with Elon. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
So I do want to comment on something, and I would like actually to hear your feedback on that, because it's actually wider than what we are discussing now. I have seen a lot of interaction when you have someone that's too young, so he's disrespected or she is disrespected. Too old, so you must be, old-fashioned and slow. You may be coming from a specific background, ethnicity, religion. And I must say that you enlightened me today, and I didn't expect that, because I thought that I know the topic that is being discussed. But somehow the way you described it makes it much more personal. And these difficulties of someone actually being excluded or pushed out a bit, when I manage teams, when I work with people, at least I'm trying, both myself and others, to say that, everyone is a person, everyone have skills and talents, and, someone is slow, but maybe more detailed oriented. Someone is more, less experienced, but they may have bright ideas that no one else in the group sort of. So it's all about the individual, totally excluding all the externalities. But the way you described it, that's a very uncomfortable position to be in. And I think that I can connect to it maybe from, Jewish perspective, Israeli perspective, what have you. But it almost feels like, I don't want to say everyone, but many people are part of some singled out group. And this is actually quite unpleasant for everyone involved. And I don't know, I would like to believe that most decent people would treat other people based on merit, right? Whatever that merit may be. It's not just you need to be excellent in everything, but you made it very, you shared an experience. I want to thank you for that, because again, I thought that I know the feeling of being everything that you described, but clearly not. So for me, it's another tool to be even more attentive to that.
Thank you. One thing that I learned is that the humans, all of us, there are two basic needs: control over the environment, because we need to feel safe, right? And safety. So safety and control goes hand in hand. When you're so preoccupied with safety and control because you don't feel you belong, or you're feeling a little different, it becomes very difficult, because think about the leaders. Leaders do have the same needs. And today I feel very empathic towards senior executives, because they're acting the way they're acting because they need to have a resemblance of control and safety somehow. So we need to, you see how difficult it is to be respectful of the individual, because they're acting as an expression of their needs. That doesn't mean they're the worst people. There is no judgment. And that's the thing I want to leave you with. Try to approach everything with a non-judgmental perspective. It's very hard. It's the hardest thing you're going to do in life, because it's so easy to put people in boxes. I like this one, I don't like that one. But being non-judgmental about yourself is the first step, It's not easy. Anybody else? But thank you, Israel. That was cool.
I will just want to say that I learned today that inclusiveness is obviously not just a title. I often think of how you can make other people feel more comfortable around you, especially in a workspace. And it starts with kindness, but it's way more than that. And I think it's just a topic that I will take with me from now on. I'll think of it, because it's more about, it's a lot about interpersonal interaction, but it's also about how you make your entire environment being more inclusive towards any kind of person. And as Israel said, everyone is holding something that makes them feel a little different and a little out of the conversation, or not related in a way. So thank you for opening my eyes towards that. So I appreciate it.
Okay. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for taking the time and open your heart to this conversation. I'm wishing you, wherever you are, to have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you again.
I'm very
Thank
grateful.
you, everyone. Thank you,
guys.
Wagner.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
Ayala,
Thank you.
of course, for
See you,
organizing.
Elon.
Thank you, Wagner and Elon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, guys. Bye. Thank you.